What's the most unethical parenting hack you know? Before we start with the first story, please hit subscribe and ring the notification bell to stay updated with us. Story 1. I got one. I fostered difficult teen boys. Obviously, their home life wasn't great, and they imitate some behavior. When I set boundaries, they don't like a lot of kids want to physically fight me because that's the way they've learned to solve problems. Okay, so here's the unethical part. If they want it, I am the one. We glove up and go to the backyard. I block and dodge until they're gassed, they cry out of frustration, and we hug it out. I've gone to work with a shiner more than once. But the kids learn that no matter how bad you are, there's always someone badder. Tough guy don't make your problems go away. And a physical contest makes you feel better. My kids have been thrown out of school, foster homes, alternative learning schools, every program. Having an outlet for that energy and anger helps, but it's not exactly ethical to tell a kid if they want it, they can come get it. Story 2. When my son was a baby, dude cried like a banshee, and he cried a lot. I was the bath giver, and it was especially bad in there due to the small space. So I went on Amazon and got myself some noise-muffling earmuffs, like what you'd use on a gun range or something. And it made the crying so much less stressful and easy to deal with, so I could just focus on loving him without the noise grating my soul. Maybe not that unethical, but I've gotten negative reactions from some people when I told them about it. Story 3. My kid didn't sleep through the night for 14 months because of his allergies, so we were absolutely running on fumes. One night I came downstairs and said, I gave him his antihistamines, and my husband looked at me with pure horror and said, I gave him his antihistamines. We called the emergency line, and they said, no need to worry, he'd just sleep. And we went to bed and got 6 unbroken hours for the first time in so long, and it was bliss. The temptation to do it again, oh my God. We never did, of course, because we're not psychos. Story 4. I recently flew internationally with my toddler, and to keep him chill in the long security lines and customs lines, I would tell him if he didn't stay quiet, they wouldn't let him on the plane. And then once on the plane, if he started getting cranky, I'd tell him if he was too loud, they'd have to turn around and take him home. Made it through 12 hours total of flying with 10 minutes of crying, so I'm calling it a win. Story 5. I'm not sure this qualifies as unethical, but my kids sure thought it did. When they were young, they had difficulty gaining weight. It wasn't that they weren't eating, their metabolisms were just too fast. One of the things the doctors recommended was giving them milkshakes every morning. This would pack in the calories, but we realized it would also fill them up so they wouldn't get some other nutrients and especially any fiber. I began adding chocolate-flavored protein powders and frozen spinach. Turns out frozen spinach is close to flavorless. One morning they caught me throwing the spinach into the blender and had a fit. I told them this was the first time I tried it and promised not to do it again. The next morning I added it anyway, as well as some chocolate chips, so they'd have a special treat as an apology. It was adorable having them come up to me and tell me it was the best milkshake I'd ever made with tiny green bits of spinach in their teeth. By the way, they're now in their 22nd and are nearly a head taller than me and my wife. Story 6. Something that has only recently been pointed out to me as potentially unethical: pulling your kids' loose baby teeth out. My husband was horrified when I told him my siblings and I never had loose teeth for long because once they were loose enough, one of my parents would just pull it the rest of the way out with their hands. Sure, it hurt, but the accidentally generous tooth fairy made up for it. I have 5 siblings and my dad accidentally gave the oldest $20 one time, grabbed the wrong bill. Of course, she bragged about getting so much money for it, so subsequently all our teeth were quite valuable. They did manage to logically explain the value down to $5 a tooth after your initial $20, but with 6 kids, it adds up LMFAO. Story 7. So I think everyone knows the don't react initially if they fall down or appear to hurt themselves in some way. Trick mine goes a step further. Act like they may have damaged the thing they hit. Kids love breaking stuff. I diffused a bedtime knock last night in which my son smacked his head against the bed guardrail. I immediately commented that he must have put a crack in the bed, pointing out the already present seam between 2 boards of the guardrail. He was proud that he was able to do it. Then of course I noted that he'll have to be more careful so he doesn't break his bed so that he wouldn't keep doing it. Got him from the verge of tears to grinning happily in 10 seconds. Flat. Story 8. Oh, my mom was full of unethical parenting. I think that's the only kind of parenting she knew how to do. Her least ethical thing, though, was probably the one where she'd go have a nap and tell me to wake her up at a certain time, and then come up screaming and swinging anytime I woke her up. But then also yell at me if I didn't wake her up. but then also yell at me if I woke her up by throwing something at her or poking her with the broom or yelling or anything else I could do at a safe, non-punchable distance. I tell you, it takes talent to make a child terrified of the concept of someone else being asleep, but he did it. Story 9. Not sure how unethical this is, but here, I have 2 older siblings. My parents didn't know the best way for them to help my oldest sibling how to read. My other sibling, middle child, they did the Smarty game. Smarties are a type of sweet, by the way. Every time they got a flashcard word right, they got given a Smarty. For me though, every time I got a word right, all 3 of us would get a Smarty. So my siblings used to chase me around the house just before the game with the flashcards, making sure I knew what the card said, because they wanted the sweets. It doesn't have to be Smarties, or other sweet for that matter, but the bribery worked well, it seems. Story 10. My kid was very honest, well-mannered, etc. Never had to use tricks on him to get him to behave. My stepmonsters, though, were inveterate liars. Finally, I'd had enough and told them that if they lie, their poop will turn green and they'd get very, very sick. For the next 2 weeks, they got grape KoolAid for every drink with the expected results. They stopped lying. P.S. My kid was in on that, and he thought it was hysterical, especially when the kids went to him and asked about it after the results. Of course, being the little evil that he was, he played right along telling them how bad their tummies are going to hurt, and they'd be so sick they wouldn't even be able to watch TV because it was that painful. Story 11. When the batteries ran out or were lost on a particularly annoying toy, my mom would tell us, "Oh, I'm so sorry." But they don't make those kinds of batteries anymore. We would be disappointed and move on making our own noises for the thing, which was way more fun than the preset ones. Wasn't until I was much older, I won't say how old, that I realized batteries didn't change kinds like fashion brands. Also, when we lived in Europe, the winters were a whole lot colder than we were used to. So once we had all piled into the car and were heading to church, of course, we'd complain about the cold despite car blankets and being bundled to high heaven. So my mom would tell us there was a light on the dash that would tell her when she could turn the hot air on. So we'd ask about the light. There is no light. She would just watch the engine temp until it was warm enough to pump hot air into the van. I was also much older than I'd like to say when that clicked. Story 12. Not a parenting hack, but definitely unethical. I used to babysit my brothers since I was the oldest daughter. My youngest brother was a hellion with extreme ADHD. It was always a challenge for whomever was watching him. He's a great and smart adult now, but I would always have the easiest time. I would tell him to do something and he would eagerly jump to complete whatever it was. One day, my mom asked me why he listened to me so well. I had told him that there were monsters that lived in the closet, the chuyakas, and if he was bad, they would come and take him away. It only took a couple of fake growls and slight convincing, and he became the poster child for perfect behavior. I'm not proud of what I did, but man, it really worked. Story 13. My daughter loves medicine, like children's Tylenol, amoxicillin, etc. She loves to take medicine. She used to ask me for medicine all the time. If her sister was sick, she was always right there waiting for her dose of medicine. Well, it got to the point that she was asking for medicine when she was completely healthy too. Obviously, I can't dope my kid up with medicine 24/7 because she enjoys the taste. So I told her that medicine only tastes good when you're sick because it's meant to help you. When you're healthy and you take medicine you're not meant to take, it tastes bitter and will make you sick because you're not supposed to be taking it. So I gave her a tiny dose of apple cider vinegar instead of Tylenol when she kept asking when she wasn't sick. She doesn't ask for it unless she's sick now because it tasted so bitter when she felt fine, and it tasted much better when she didn't feel good. Story 14. Not sure if this is unethical. I know when I have kids, when they're old enough to understand the concept, they have to get rid of a toy plushie if they want a new one. Growing up, my parents were better at regulating toys for my brother and I rather than my youngest sister. But the house was always covered in piles of stuff, and it overwhelmed me so much when they had her and made it even worse. She always had a plethora of toys and stuffies, so many there was a path to her bed. It was very overwhelming. I always think, when's the last time you played with the stuff at the bottom of the pile? What bugs are hiding in this pile? Into her teens now, and you still can hardly walk in there. Maybe it doesn't help that my mother can hardly get rid of anything herself. I see it with my nephew too, and he isn't even a year and a half yet. Can barely get into their living room. I see getting cognitive building toys and a few plushies, and a few outdoor things. That's it. I am not putting up with that. Want something new? Get rid of something old. Story 15. One of the most precarious child-raising hacks is to utilize blame and energetic control to control children's behavior. This can consolidate, making children feel as well much competent for their parents' enchant or well-being, which can lead to long-term mental damage. For case, a parent might say things like, "In the event that you do not do what I say, it recommends you do not cherish me," or "After everything I've done for you, this is how you reimburse me." These methods can instill a sense of blame and commitment in children, controlling them into complying with the parent's wishes out of fear of energized abdicate or rejection. This diagram of control is destructive since it undermines the child's capacity to make a solid sense of self and opportunity, conceivably driving to issues such as self-esteem, uneasiness, feel sorry for, and bother in shaping solid affiliations a brief time afterward in life. It's noteworthy for watchmen to create an environment of boundless cherishing back or conceivably, then utilizing enthusiastic control to control their children. All right, folks, that's a wrap. If you like this, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. You can also share your those in the comment below.